by show of hands, how many of y'all would love to have him as your boss, or would want to be him as a boss? Actually, don't even raise your hand, because that's wrong, okay? And let me tell you why. Because this here is Michael Scott. He's from a funny show called The Office. And in the show, he's made some wrong assumptions about his employees, as in this clip here.
The worst thing about prison was the Dementors. They were flying all over the place, and they were scary, and then they'd come down and they'd suck the soul out of your body, and it hurt.
Dementors like in Harry Potter?
No, not Harry Potter. There are no movies in prison. This is my point. You guys got it soft and cushy. This place is freaking awesome. The people are awesome. Your boss is nice. Everybody seems to get along. People are tolerant. People who jump to conclusions can redeem themselves. Nobody's bitch. I hope that this scared you. And for me, Prison Mike, to you, I just want to thank you for listening to me. Letting me be a part of your life today. Because you got a good life. You got a good life. A good life. So, what do you think? It doesn't sound so great, does it?
Wow. Thank you. That must have been hard for you to relive that, both of you.
Yeah, that wasn't really at all my experience. There's certain elements of what you performed I've seen on television, but it didn't remind me of my time in prison.
So here, Michael Scott obviously assumed how his employee's time in prison was, but it was not accurate at all. And actually, that employee ended up quitting, so that's not good. So today, we're going to teach y'all 6 things not to assume about your employees from a boss's perspective. The first assumption is don't assume that your employees are equally as invested as you are. So, like, sometimes your employees aren't going to take ownership over the things that they do, whether that would be not completing the task on time, arriving to work late, or leaving work early. And a solution to this would be just like having really good communication with them and having a good trust and bond with them, because if you have that, then they'll be more comfortable to talk to you. And also a good thing is for them not to be as invested as you are, because if they were, then they're pretty much going to be competing for your position, and you probably don't want that. Lastly, this is what you signed up for, not what they signed up for. Unless they have a stake in the company, then there's really no real reason as to why they should be as invested as you are. So now that I've talked about the first assumption, I'm going to pass it on to Moniz with the second one.
Just like that motivation that you get from the workplace, this money is fake. So today I'll be talking about how employers assume that the only thing that motivates employees is money, and that all problems stem from the shortage of money. For example, if an employee wanted to see his family or see his kids after a while, an employer would just assume, nah, he just wants money, that's all. That's the only motivation for him. He doesn't want to be happy, he doesn't need that. He just needs the money, he needs the green. But yeah, that's the assumption that some employers have that kind of ruins the relationship in the culture of the organization itself. And the solution to that is not always money, but it could be a flexible schedule, it could be a perk, it could be something that can make your employees passionate about what they're doing. And that kind of hinders that. So Maslow has a hierarchy of needs for the humans, and the top of that pyramid is self-actualization. Employees want to be happy in the workplace. They want to feel like they have a passion, and they want to be creative. They want to be able to inspire, or be inspired by others, and be inspired and aspire others. The next assumption that employers have is that they'll tolerate a boss's lack of decorum. Decorum is basically your manners, right? So everybody knows that the boss, he has all the risks, he has all the stress on top of him. But the boss has a mindset of like, hey, I'm the boss, everybody knows I do all the work. How about let me just drop the manners, let me drop the highs, hellos, the thank yous, and goodbyes. Let me just drop all of that, and they'll understand. They just want the money. The only purpose of them of coming to work is because of the money, right? That's their primary source. So that's an assumption. So that actually hinders the self-actualization and the passion that employees have in the workspace. And that increases negativity, and which negativity is contagious. So the personality of the boss rubs off on the employees. If the boss is happy and upgoing, everyone else will be right. And I'll pass it down to Ziad, and he'll talk about the next assumption.
Cool. So I'll be covering the next two assumptions. The fourth assumption is that they expect their boss will be held to different standards. And what I mean by this, or what you shouldn't want, is that you don't want your boss to, like in the picture, be just, in his own space, just barking orders at you and you just mindlessly following, right? Because who's going to be willing to follow someone like that? You want someone who's going to lead you, right? Who gets down and dirty, who gets on your level. I'm not saying does the same work as you, but gets on your level and establishes that connection with you, right? You want someone that'll listen, right? Because employees obviously have a lot of valuable information that they can really put in, and you can get a lot out of a conversation with them. The third thing you want is to watch your words. And what I mean by this is words have a very, very big impact on people, right? No matter what it is you say, whether you speak very little or a lot, it'll definitely affect a person in either a negative way or a positive way. So positive reinforcement is definitely the way to go. The fourth thing is that you don't want to micromanage, right? So micromanaging, you can definitely set a goal for them, but you shouldn't be nitpicky on all the details. You shouldn't walk them through their job, because it is their job, right? They'll do it their own way. Every employee has their own way of working, right? So you don't want to micromanage them. And then the last thing you want to focus on is to take responsibility for mistakes, because wherever you work, 90% of jobs out there are going to be team-based, right? Just like we're in a team here as a group. If one person makes a mistake, it's everyone's mistake. You should definitely own it, right? You can't just hang one person out to dry, because that'll completely kill their motivation. And the next assumption is going to be that they're intolerant of risk or change. So, like Michael Scott says, too much change is not a good thing, right? Ask the climate, which is a pretty funny joke, but what I mean by this is that when you inculcate change into your workplace, it can affect people in lots of different ways, right? So I just highlighted 3 main reactions you'll get, and there's a lot more, but they can all be summarized between these 3. So the first one that I'm gonna touch on is resistance. And what I mean by resistance is, you'll hear things like, why do we need this change? Is it really that important, right? They'll be on the fence about it. They'll have a little doubt in their mind, okay? The second one is gonna be anger. This is your worst case scenario, where you introduce a change and you'll get, the older employees who've been there for so long, who've been doing the same thing for such a long time, you'll hear things like, we don't need this at all, don't fix what isn't broken, right? And the last thing, which is your best case scenario, is you'll get that enthusiastic employee who is willing to tackle whatever change you bring head on, right? They're willing to try new things. And that's kind of what you want out of every employee, but that's definitely not what you're gonna get out of every employee. So what is your basic solution to, I guess, both assumptions is to establish a connection. And I'll mention a quick story, personal experience. And I work in a sales job. I've worked there for 2 years, right? And over those 2 years, for I think the past 13 or 14 months, you have a quota to hit. And I've hit that quota and beyond for 13 or 14 months. And so around 2 months ago, my manager noticed that my numbers dropped, right? So he called me in his office. And instead of, being like, why are your numbers dropping? Like, what's going on? You need to be on task, whatever. Because obviously, if your numbers drop, the company loses money, right? It looks bad on the store. Instead, what he did was ask, how are you? Right? And those 3 words can definitely mean a lot, right? Because how are you? That's establishing a connection, right? That's building that trust, building that loyalty, building that appreciation, because I appreciate it a lot more if someone asks how I am instead of just criticizing me. So that's my 2 assumptions, and I'll pass it on to Itta.
Thank you, Ziad. So now most of you know about 5 assumptions. Let's move forward with the 6th and most common assumption. Employees can withstand organizational havoc. In a simple language, employees will tolerate every mess created by superiors. There are 2 types of business owners, detail-oriented and brief lovers. Brief lovers as in who don't like long summaries and all that. Whichever category you fall in, if you think that running the show means leaving a trail of dysfunctional processes in your journey, then you're more likely to have angry teammates on a daily basis. I agree that it's employees' duty to lighten the burden of business owner, but that doesn't mean they have to face dysfunctional processes, unorganized contracts, or too much politics. These all three traits make a perfect unsatisfied employee. And if, as a business owner, you should understand one thing, that when you hire a professional, you want him to complete the job within the time limit, then don't make their job hard. It basically expecting someone to smile when they are walking on a floor full of Legos. This should be illegal, but anyways. To conclude this, I want to remind you all something. Previously in our class, our professor taught about how employees should behave. We should never go to our manager or supervisor and tell them that this is so tough, we cannot do it. It's basically like telling him that it's up to you now, it's your problem, it's not my problem. That's the best practice for an employee. But what is the best practice for entrepreneur? We all, most of us are actually ITS major, and we expect that 9 out of 10 students who are ITS major will be a good employee. But we want to talk about that one brave heart who will become an entrepreneur, who will have his or her own business. So the quote says that be the change you want to see in the world. That quote is by Mahatma Gandhi, but our version of it is, if you don't like someone as a boss right now, don't be like him as a boss when you become boss. Thank you. Any questions?